If you're like me and you like music and you game a lot, you're always looking for the perfect headset or headphones. And it's kind of impossible to find it, but you're always looking for better sound that's going to fit your needs, that's going to sound really good, really clear, and practically works for everything. And if you're on a budget like I am, and you don't want to spend too much on several different types of headphones, you want one that can do it all. And that might lead you to either of these two, especially if you're looking for an open back headphone. Because if you've tried open back headphones, you know that they just sound more natural, they sound more clear, they just sound better. Of course, they don't have as much bass as a closed back. That's probably why you're watching this video. You like open backs, you don't like closed backs that much, and you want something that sounds good for music, for gaming, and for multimedia consumption. And I think these two are really good options, but I want to delve a little bit more into why I believe these might be better for you than these. So these are the Beyerdynamic DT900 Pro X, and these are the Sennheiser HD 560S. Not to be confused with the 550s, which are newer and have a little bit of a different design. I did try the 550s. I actually find these a little bit better. I find them more comfortable than the 550s. The 550s, for whatever reason, the inside of the driver would touch my ear, and it was really not uncomfortable, but it was kind of annoying. And I also had this little piece back here. I don't know if you could see it. There's like a little indent, not indent, there's a little plastic thing sticking out, which on the 550s was bothering me, and it didn't on this one. I also like the headband better on this than the HD 550. And the sound quality is very similar to the 550. Similar in that it feels very analytical. The highs are not pronounced, but they're very present. The mid-range is fantastic, in my opinion. And the 550s have a little bit more bass, and I think the driver makes things a little bit more clear, but it's almost negligible. And if you're getting the 560s, on a really good deal, which I did, I found these open box excellent on Best Buy, and they really are excellent. They look like they haven't even been used. I got them for $75, which I think is insane. These Beyerdynamics I got open box on eBay for around $200, and I think that's also a good deal, but there's a couple things that I'd simply just like better on the Sennheisers that kind of keep me from picking the Beyerdynamic over them. Let me start with what I like better about the Beyerdynamic DT900 Pro X than the 560S from Sennheiser. First of all, I like the look better. I don't know about you guys, but I think these look super clean. I love this grill look on the outside. I really like the gray ear pads. I also feel like the ear pads are better quality than the Sennheiser ones. They're a little bit softer. I wouldn't say necessarily softer as in the material is softer, but the foam itself is actually, it springs back very quickly on the Beyerdynamics, a little bit less so on the Sennheisers. What I also like better about the Beyerdynamics is just the construction. This feels like a tank. It feels like a tank. I like the foam on top as well. They just feel better. This is aluminum. This is plastic, but it feels like really high quality plastic. And this one just feels like it'll last longer. The Sennheisers are basically just plastic all around. Sennheiser does have a reputation of being very reliable, so I don't think they won't be durable. I think they will be durable, but the materials used on the Beyerdynamic just feel better. The problem with that is the weight. These are way heavier than these, and that goes into comfort, which I will delve into in a little bit. Something else I really like about the Beyerdynamic is the XLR, mini XLR connection. It just feels so tactile, so boom. That just feels good. That's the right connection. That's what almost every headphone I feel like should be using. And the Sennheiser HD 490 Pro, which is much more expensive than either of these, those do use a mini XLR, and I've tried those, and the mini XLR is real nice. So I wish the Sennheisers had this connection. but it's not a deal breaker because the 3.5 millimeter connection is perfectly fine. One more thing I do like on the Beyerdynamic, and we'll start getting into sound a little bit here, is they do have a little bit more bass. I think it's because these are kind of like semi-open. They're not fully open. They are open back and you can hear your surroundings, but it's a little bit more closed off than a normal Sennheiser open back. These are just, you can hear everything around you. And it also leaks out the bass a little bit. So these have a little bit more sub bass. The thing is though, I feel the bass a little bit more on the Sennheisers for whatever reason. They seem to have like a little bit more, not punch, but they have a little bit more presence. The Beyerdynamic, something that is kind of throwing me off about the sound of these, they sound boring. They sound a little bit boring. And that's fine. They're actually really nice for gaming because I like the imaging on these. You really pinpoint where certain sounds are coming from. And the overall sound signature is quite good for gaming. But when we're talking about music, these just, you feel like you're missing something. You feel like you're missing something. And I think it's because they really tamed down the treble peak that has it's designed, that is present on other Beyerdynamic headphones. They really tamed that with this one. And I really don't get almost any sibilance. But at the same time, I do feel like you're losing a little bit of detail, a little bit of sparkle, a little bit of air with them. And it had me looking for another option. And then I just found a good deal on the Sennheiser HD 560S, and I figured I would give them a try, and I have, and I just like the sound better on these than these. There's just more, not necessarily openness, but they feel more airy. They feel a little bit crisper. The highs are definitely more present. The mid-range is perfect in my opinion, except for male vocals sound a little bit raspy, which actually is pretty natural. I feel like voices sound a little bit more clear on the Beyerdynamic, but I just like the overall presentation of the Sennheisers a little bit more. I also feel like the soundstage is a little bit wider on the Sennheisers, not overly so. These do have probably better imaging, but I just like the Sennheisers better. I feel like everything sounds better. Almost every genre sounds better. For gaming, for single player games, I actually kind of like the Beyerdynamic a little bit better. It's not too big of a difference. For FPS, I like the HD 560S slightly better, but it's very close. For gaming, I think this is a little bit of a wash, but the HD 560S just gives you a better package just because they're so good for music in addition to the gaming aspect of it. I also just find them more comfortable. The Beyerdynamics are just too heavy for me, and it's a little bit fatiguing after a while. I can't wear them for so long. I like the ear pads better, but I don't like that they're circular, and it just doesn't feel as natural as the oval shape of the Sennheisers on my ears, at least. The top headband really wasn't an issue for me with either of them, but it feels a little bit better on the HD 560S. The clamp force, the Beyerdynamics are supposed to have like really bad clamp force, people say, but I didn't find that really to be the case. They do clamp a little bit, but it wasn't too much different than the Sennheisers, and I think the Sennheisers are gonna open up a little bit. Maybe the Beyerdynamics have already started to loosen up a little bit, so maybe that's why I didn't find the clamp force to be too bad. But I just find the Sennheisers more comfortable overall. I could wear it for longer. I think they sound better. I like the sound signature better, and at least for me, I found them cheaper, and I think you can too. The one thing I will say, you need an amp or at least a kind of powerful DAC. Not necessarily powerful, but just a DAC that can get you a little bit more volume, a little bit more juice out of them. Because using them with this Anchor 3.5 millimeter to USB-C little dongle, I find myself almost maxing out on my iPhone 16 Pro with that dongle on the Sennheiser. On the Beyerdynamic, I could go like 30% lower in volume, and these definitely have more power on them. So that's something you might want to might want to consider, but you could just get a little bit of a better DAC, dongle DAC, or an amp, and you should be fine with these. So in conclusion, I think both of these are really strong options, especially if you can get them open box for a reduced price. I think both of these are worth checking out. I just find the Sennheisers a little bit more fun to listen to. I find them more comfortable, and for my use case, they're just better, in my opinion. But I'm sure I'll be checking out another headphone sometime soon, because this is just what happens when you get into this hobby. But if you guys have checked out either of these, let me know what you guys think in the comments below, what else you've checked out, and if you want me to look at any other headphones in particular. See you guys in the next one.